March 9th, Casper Ten Boom. When evil descends, a man of conviction stands up. When the Nazis occupied Holland in 1940, 84-year-old Casper Ten Boom lived as he always had, a life of love and faith in action, upstairs above his watch shop. The only difference was higher stakes. Affectionately nicknamed Harlem's Grand Old Man, Casper refused to leave the side of his neighbors when they were forced to take the dreaded yellow star, identifying them as Jews. "Go home," his friends urged. But Casper wouldn't budge. "If it is good enough for God's chosen people to suffer," he said, "then it is good enough for me to suffer with them." When Casper returned home later that day, he handed the star to his daughter Betsy. "Could you sew this onto my coat?" Corey cried, "No, Father." In a passionate discussion, Casper's daughters convinced him there were better ways to help the Jews. Casper lovingly placed the fabric star in the pages of his Bible. Soon, Jewish people knocked on Casper's door. His home became a haven where Jews hid until more secure arrangements could be made through the Dutch underground. Planning for a likely Gestapo raid, Casper installed a secret room upstairs. Building materials were smuggled in. A level stuck in a sock, 2 or 3 bricks like loaves of bread in a basket. They called the room Angel's Den. On February 28, 1944, minutes before the Gestapo stamped to the 3rd floor, 6 people slipped into the secret room. One group of officers splintered floorboards and searched for hollow walls, and another group beat Casper and his family and demanded information about Jewish people. Casper tasted blood, and his head throbbed as he leaned heavily upon his daughters. The Gestapo shoved them through the dark streets of Harlem and held them in a crowded gymnasium. As they awaited their fate, Casper did what he did every night. He prayed and shared scripture. He had no Bible, but his steady, faithful voice recited Psalm 91, verses 1 and 2. "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I will trust." The next morning, Casper was told he could go home if he stopped sheltering Jews. Casper stood erect, his white hair a halo. "If I go home today, tomorrow I will open my door again to any man in need who knocks." Fury replaced compassion, and the Nazis thrust Casper and the daughters he loved into a concrete courtyard to await imprisonment. As Casper was taken from her, Corey cried, "God go with you, and also with you, my daughters." It was their last loving exchange. After 9 days in Scheveningen prison, Casper died. But the 6 people hidden in his home escaped. 3 of them survived the war. During the Nazi occupation of Holland, the Ten Booms and their friends rescued more than 800 people, Jewish people and non-Jewish members of the Dutch underground. Extraordinary times demand extraordinary action. But Casper Ten Boom didn't suddenly step into greatness. He had prepared long before. "The cornerstone of my father's character," wrote Corey, "was his steady and consistent walk with the Lord, his knowledge of and trust in the Bible. He believed the Bible was relevant for every part of his daily life." When evil descends, a man of conviction stands up. Will you?
Hey man, my name is Mike Mott, and today is March 9th. We just listened to the story of Casper Ten Boom. It's an extraordinary story of bravery. Or is it? Did Casper Ten Boom really live an extraordinarily brave life, or was he simply living a life of faith, following the example of Jesus, a life of love, of action, and of deeds? You see, James tells us that One of the indications that faith is alive in our lives is that it's always going to be followed by actions and by our deeds. This is what we see in Casper ten Boom's life. His faith was alive. James tells us that faith without actions, without deeds, is actually dead. But Casper ten Boom was a man of conviction, and his convictions and his faith were followed and connected to his actions and his deeds. And this is the challenge for us today, man. God has called us, has called you to be men of faith, to live a faith that's connected to actions and deeds and convictions. And when we do that, it brings God down to life, into our everyday life, so that the world around us can see him and feel him and experience him. And so let me ask you a question. Is your faith more than theology, more than words, more than belief? Is your faith like that of Casper ten Boom, a faith that's followed by convictions, by actions, and by deeds? Is your faith alive? This is our challenge for us today, men. When we have that kind of faith, we're going to be able to stand up to the evil that comes against our lives and surrounds our lives. And this is the very thing that the world around us is looking to see. Is God alive? And does he work in ordinary people's lives? This is our challenge today, men. Have a great day.